Okay. If you come in the room, if you could mute your microphone. I don't have room powers. Melvin has that, and he's had to reboot. When you first enter the room, your microphone's going to be active. So if you have TV on behind you or stuff like that, it's going to come through the mic. So if you could, you can unmute your microphone when you want to speak. Just if you don't mind, try to remember to remute it when you're not talking. So Jason is getting his setup ready so he can show us one of the labs from the Flatiron pre-course, the free Flatiron pre-course, the one you can access on Career Karma app through Spotlight. You can also access it, I guess, through their website, Flatiron Schools.
Cool. Hey, how's everybody doing? I'm actually going to pull this up now. So I'll do a screen share here. Craig, this is going to be a silly question.
Yeah.
What is the command again to run the test? It's been a little while.
Just learn.
Okay, learn. Okay.
I know once you get away from doing their stuff, you start doing your own, you have to.
Actually, to run a test, it's learn test.
Learn test? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, learn is fine too.
Okay.
Actually,
I thought learn is basically you tell it that's what you're doing, and then learn test is to test what you've typed in, and then learn submit is when everything's passed.
Nope. Learn should work.
Okay.
I think it knows. I'm not saying learn test doesn't work, but I don't think you need to write test. And by the way, speaking of that, for anyone that's going to be doing Flatiron curriculum through the learn.co, when you run your learn, instead of just when you run learn and it runs everything on your editor, it's going to show you every single error, right? So if you're only working on the first part of the lab, it's going to show you whether it passed or failed, and it's going to show you all the errors for all the other stuff you haven't even got to yet. So
yeah, you're right. Learn is just learn. Learn.
Okay.
Yeah, but what you can type in instead of learn, you can type learn space dash fail dash fast.
It's learn dash F dash F.
Okay, you can actually abbreviate that even further. Right, perfect. Yeah. So what that does is it's going to run it, and it's going to stop as soon as it hits the first error. So you don't have a whole page of errors. You can concentrate on doing one part of the lab at a time. You run the dash F dash F. It's going to start it. It's going to run through everything that passes, and it's going to stop on the first error. So you can look at that first error and see where you need to start to fix that one. Okay.
Is this only on Flatiron's course?
That's on the learn.co. So it's set up that way with Flatiron. I don't know if other boot camps or other people's free curriculum does that.
It's whenever you connect the learn.co with whatever IDE you're using. Like if you open up a normal environment, which uses, I think they give you Visual Studio. If you use that, then yeah, you can use learn to run, and then learn.
Well, if you're doing it in the IDE on learn.co's page, it's the same stuff, because if you set up your Visual Studio Code, you use your Flatiron profile token.
Correct.
And you sync Visual Studio Code to it, so you can actually load like the next lesson and submit and everything right from your Visual Studio Code. I actually have a walkthrough for that. I have a link to a GitHub that has a complete walkthrough. If anybody wants that, I'll put it in the chat. I'll get the link in a second. I'll put it in the chat. Eventually, if you're doing Flatiron curriculum, you're going to want to get away from that IDE, and they encourage you to do that, because once you start getting into some of those more complicated labs and stuff, you're not going to want to be doing it on the on their website, the learn.co, the little tiny little thing on your screen.
You're going to need some more real estate to play with when you start.
Especially when you start doing stuff later, like with Rails and React, and it's a whole different playground with what you need to make that stuff work too. If you are on a PC and using a Windows computer and you're going to do Flatiron software engineering, you're really going to want to look into either some sort of a WSL like terminal shell, Ubuntu, or something that you can run on your Windows machine, or consider consider installing Linux of some kind in dual boot on a computer. Now, if everything I just said makes absolutely no sense, you have no idea what I'm talking about. When you get to that point, if you enroll in Flatiron with the Windows 10 machine, message me and I'll explain it more for you then. Otherwise, just forget everything I just said.
I'm still here. I'm still here, Craig.
I
fine.
tried to load the Ubuntu, but it wouldn't let me get past establishing like a username for some reason. So I tried it, but I had problems, and I'm going to try it again just in case I missed something the first time around.
I'm going to get this link for this walkthrough that I have. I'm going to put it in the chat text in this meeting right here. So if somebody's watching this later and it's recorded, I don't think you're able to see chat, but for those of you that are in here, I'm going to post it. And if anybody watches this recorded later and you want this link to get the walkthrough for the WSL setup, message me on the Career Karma app and I will I'll email it to you or whatever. So in chat right now, this GitHub repo, if you bring that up and you scroll down to the README, it has a complete walkthrough of setting up the Windows subsystem, because in your terminal, you're going to want that WSL shell, because when you go to run Ruby and Rails, things like that, you'll need that in order to do that on a Windows machine. If you are on a Macintosh, or excuse me, on a Mac, you won't need to do that. There's other things you'll probably want to put on a Mac. I don't use a Mac, but I think Homebrew, is that?
Yeah, Homebrew. Yeah. I'm using a Mac. Homebrew. Node. We definitely want to put Node on there.
Mm-hmm.
Once you set up Node, you're pretty good. All you need to do is just open your terminal and just CD to the directory where you have your stuff, and once you open the terminal within VS Code, whatever your project files are, it will recognize that. Because obviously I'm running Rails and Node in different in the different terminals within VS Code, and it recognizes it. So.
Well, and like I said a few minutes ago, some of y'all, if you're hearing us talking about certain stuff and you're like, okay, I'm totally lost, don't worry about it. You'll get to that point. By the time you get to that point, you'll understand it better by then and realize what it is you need. You still might need some help, and that's, like I said, I'll try to help any way I can. But
you will get there.
Seriously. If you're brand new, every one of our folks that have been on Career Karma that like Keisha and a couple of the other people they've done on the AMAs and stuff, they were just like you, I promise you. A year ago, they didn't even know what HTML was, some of them, or JavaScript, So don't feel like you can't get there too. It's just a process. And like I said earlier today on Twitter, if you've been in a situation in your life, even since high school, or maybe you didn't even do that great in high school, don't feel like you have to be some kind of brainiac to do this. Okay. The main thing is you just need to learn how to learn. I know that sounds stupid, but it is. You need to figure out how to learn stuff. And if you haven't come from a background where you were big into academic or didn't go to college and all that kind of stuff, don't think you can't still do it. You just have to figure out how to do it and practice. And just a couple other things before I turn it over to Jason. As far as the app goes, if y'all weren't familiar with it, we have a new discussions tab on the app. When you first turn on the app, you see it says chats, discussion, and people up at the top. That discussion tab is like a section specifically for posting things. And you'll see the different topics that are in there right now. I'm sure we'll be adding other topics later. Check those out. There's a whole section for beginners. There's a section for job search. There's a section for full stack development. People's stories, chapters and stories and stuff on there. So if you haven't gone on the app yet to do that, please do. If you're able to contribute to that, you can add to it. So if you see a topic on there and you've got some other information or a link or a website you found that's helpful, feel free to add on that too. Also, if you're brand new and you haven't joined any squads, search the squads or create your own squad for whatever topic that's going to help you. If you're working on a certain thing, find a squad or more than one squad, join it. You'll meet other people that are, learning or in the same phase as you are, or maybe in the same area code you are, or whatever example you want to use. Also, if you have not had a coaching session, if you're brand new and you have not had a coaching session, I highly recommend you schedule one of those. I'm a coach. We've got quite a few people on CK that are coaches. We're all just like you, but we're further along. We're already enrolled with boot camps, things like that, but we're here to help you through the process too. So otherwise, Jason, you want to just give them a quick background of where you're coming from and what you've kind of how you got to where you're at now, and any suggestions or tips on folks' learning process as they're learning, anything you want to throw at them?
Yes. So give me 2 seconds. I was chewing on something.
I'm sorry.
I'll try to sneak it in before.
We need some elevator music to kind of play for a second before.
I know.
From Ipanema or something.
So, listening to you, Greg, you are like 1,000% right. My background is in education a little bit. Had a tutoring company for a few years where we taught some high school and stuff, but I have a degree in biology and chemistry and taught a lot of math. But I'm reluctant to say stuff like that because I don't want anybody to think that lends to my ability or their lack of ability to learn this stuff if they're not proficient in those backgrounds. I'd be lying to say that background hasn't helped me, but I believe that anybody can learn this stuff regardless of your background, like you said. And I heard learning how to learn and that concept, and at times I thought it was kind of cliche, but leaving out of the boot camp and having been confronted with a lot of things that were like Greek on Pluto, and then you learn it or you pick it up or you're able to manipulate it a week or two later, and you do it over and over again, you would get more comfortable with being uncomfortable, more comfortable with the idea of learning how to learn and being taught how to, being taught how to learn. I just went on a job interview the other day, and they were throwing stuff at me like in a totally different field, cybersecurity, and they were talking about how all this stuff was working, and I had no idea. And they were like, if we bring you on, you're going to be doing this, and you're going to be, and everything they were talking about, I had no idea. And everything that I was going to need to learn, I do not know. But I didn't get that knot in my gut. I didn't get that knot in my throat. I didn't get those butterflies in my stomach because I've been conditioned so far to learn, to learn how to learn. And like you said, some of the other people on Career Karma who've been doing stuff for a year and they sound like wizards and they know magic and all that stuff. I went into the boot camp in July. I started. So what's that, 7-8 months later? I'm pretty comfortable with stuff that, looking at people in the past before I started, I'm like, it's going to take me years to get to the point of understanding how to use GitHub, how to, push stuff, how to branch, and you'll get that stuff. Do not worry about it. So that's a little bit of my background. I graduated in October. About to start working in a couple of weeks.
Nice. I tell people too, when I'm like doing coaching sessions or whatever too, it's almost like it's muscle memory. Just like if you've ever taken typing in school, when you first started, you had no idea where to put your fingers, what was going on. But because you ran drills and you practiced.
Irrelevant as bitch. Lucky too that what's her name even told Trina about you.
Hey guys, can you
because she made a fool for herself.
Can you
in front of Trina because of Trick Daddy?
All right.
On whatever.
Hey Jeffrey, could you please mute your mic?
Correct. So Nikki, so she got vouched by Trick Daddy, and she made a fool of herself the first time, and now this is when her cousin is the one that's vouching for her, and this is what happens again.
Jeffrey, could you please
mute your mic?
Metro's not trying to get no checks because apparently.
Okay, I guess I do have mute powers there. Sorry about that. Melvin may have turned host over to me. I don't know. The meeting was set up by Melvin, so I thought he was the only one that could do that. Okay, sorry. So let's see, Trick Daddy, and then I was going to say, muscle memory. So when you're doing these tutorials of different things, don't just watch. If you have a sandbox or something there, if you can put your fingers on the keyboard and type and code along with them, you will get used to syntax and different things and what's expected and what's missing, and etc. So don't get stuck in that tutorial purgatory, they call it, where you just find yourself watching everybody else do something. Get in there and get code. You can do it. It can not work. You can break it. That's fine. You can always fix it. Yeah. But if you're learning, you'll get to the point where like, okay, let's see. Okay, I'm going to need a function here. You're going to throw the framework down for a function and then figure out what you got to put in between it. You know, you need an array. You know, you need whatever. Same thing with HTML and CSS. You're going to throw that stuff together and architect that app or that page or whatever, and then you're going to go back in and build in what you need. So sorry about all that interruption there. Jason, are you ready, or do you need
yes
more?
Yep.
Okay.
So so what we're going to do is so I finished the code. I finished this one. So what I'd like to do is if I'm going to actually screen share that, and Craig, what do you think about the idea of people kind of jumping in at certain parts to ask about certain parts? Or
yeah, well, I'm going to assume there's people in here right now that are currently working on this course, right? So if you are, and you definitely have questions about this lab on there, the Deli Counter lab, then unmute your mic, ask Jason whatever, and then he should be able to explain, or it goes for anybody. Even if you aren't doing this, if you have a question about JavaScript and you see him specifically working on something, absolutely. If you need a few minutes to go over something and then wait to answer questions, just say that, like, I'm going to go over this for a few minutes, and when I'm done, ask me some questions, and you can just kind of go from there.
Okay, perfect.
But so, yeah, anything they want to ask, go for it.
Okay, excellent. So if anybody has any specific questions, if not, I'll just go through the README and just go back and forth between the README and what I actually did to see, to show what corresponds. So obviously our objectives are to add elements to an array. Does anybody not know what an array is? What data structure the array looks like?
I'm new to JavaScript, so I don't know.
Okay. So
yeah, I'm brand new to JavaScript too.
Okay, perfect. So JavaScript has these data structures, and to not be further confusing or sound too technical, we have data structures where we can store values, right? So everybody kind of knows about variables, right? So var, and I could say var name, I can't type in front, is Jason, right? So we're pretty confident, we're pretty familiar with the variable data type, right? Where we can take a variable, we could store a string in it, right? But what if we wanted to store more than one person's name, right? So we can say var team, right? And we can store this team, we can store more than one person in this team variable. So we can say a team has, let's say maybe an NBA team. I'm a big basketball fan, so I can just say, we have Jason on the team, we have Craig on the team. If I pick your name, it's just arbitrarily because you're on my screen. So I see Jeffrey there, right? And Sierra, am I hacking your name?
Don't forget Trick Daddy.
Yes, and we're gonna throw Trick Daddy in for our point guard at the end. He could either be point guard or center. He'd probably be center because he's a 5. We can just call him Trick. So this is a data an array, right? This is an array, and it's indicated by these brackets. And this allows us to keep an array of data types, which are strings. It just allows us to access a set of information or a set of data within a variable that's more than just a string. That's just more than one thing. It's more than one string. It's more than one number. Let's say we put jersey numbers in here, right? I'm a huge Kobe fan. I could put Kobe, 24 as a jersey. Craig, I don't know what's your favorite number. I don't know, 14, right? We can put all these different type of data structures in here. It's not just strings. So we can put numbers, we can put strings. So this is when you see something indicated with brackets, this is called an array. Any other questions before we move forward a little bit? Okay, I'll take silence as a no, but please jump in. Don't worry about interrupting me. I'll just stop. So our instructions are, so we need to add elements to an array. We just talked about what an array is, right? And we're going to add elements to an array. An array is also a data type that actually has inherited what they're called methods on it. So if that sounds foreign, all that means is that if I have something like, let's say I'm building a team, right? So let's just call this team Career Karma, right? And we're just building a team, right? I can start off this team Career Karma with an empty, this is called an empty array. It's an array because it has brackets, but there's nothing in it, right? So an array, just this data type called an array, has methods or things that we can attach or do to it to alter the array, right? So here in number 1 in our objectives, it says add elements to an array. Well, an array, the array data type has a feature that allows us to add things to an array. So one of the features would be, if I want to add something to the array, I could say team KC.push. And if I want to add a person to the team, I can just say Jason, and push here, this push part, this .push part is actually saying, hey, whatever I wrap in parentheses after the array, right? Because the team KC is our array that we established up here that was empty. Man, let me just take this array word out of it. Since teams KC is an empty array, we can actually use this push, it's called a method, to actually push Jason into that array. So that would look like once we went back and said console log, for instance, console log team KC, what that would look like is that would have Jason coming out of it because we pushed, right, the name Jason into the team. And maybe I should show you guys what that might look like. Now here, let's see. So let me see. Node. How do I do? Craig, how do I do node? How do I do the node ID? How do I do the node environment? I don't really use it. How do I do?
Are you wanting to get out of Bash and do a different one?
Yeah, I just want to do node. How do I do node? Okay, let's see. Let me see. Okay.
I know how to get to WSL shell or. All
right, you know what? I'm gonna jump over here real fast.
So you can go to your in your settings of your VSC and go to the palette and add or change your.
Oh, right. The yeah.
You can add or change different terminals.
Yeah.
Different shells, excuse me.
Yeah. Python. Oh, that's. Oh no. Hold on. I don't want that. Let's see. No.
Sounds kind of crazy, but maybe just try typing node.
I know, right? There. Look at that. Who is that? Thank you, man. I'm just.
Griff. Yeah, Griff. No problem.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's see.
Peter Griffin's son, Chris.
Oh, cool.
Hey, Chris. Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, so, he was like Peter Griffin's son. I just got that.
Said he should be making money for them using his name on the Family Guy.
Oh man.
I really should, man.
So here we're establishing our empty array, right? Team KC, and it shows undefined, right? So what's going on? Do we have it? Okay. So let's check to see if we actually have Team KC, and it gives us our empty array.
I think you turned your screen share off.
Oh, sorry. I went back. Okay,
it's okay. It's just for a second.
I don't know how to do Zoom. Let's see.
It's Team CK, man. We're all here to work together to get this.
Bye, man. Okay. So you guys see my
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's see what I just did. So on this line here, we instantiated our array with team CK. Once I hit enter, it came back undefined. But when I call team CK, I get that empty array. All right, so let's just add Craig to that. So we can say team CK or KC dot push, right? And then we can add Craig to that, right? And now, so what's interesting about push is it returns the length of the array, or how many elements are actually in the array. So that's the default kind of, that's a return value of push. But if we go back to team KC, we can see that Craig's there. So that's what the push function of the array, the push method of the array object does. So I know we're going a little bit off topic, but is everybody kind of with me? Should I go a little faster? Any questions?
I think.
Please jump in.
What did you say about the dot push again?
So dot push is actually a method or a function that's inherent to arrays that when you use it, it actually puts a new thing into the array. Right. So push. Right. So if I do push Jason, right? So I'm gonna add myself to the team, right? Now we can see that it defaults to 2 because there's 2 elements. That's what it doesn't default, but it returns 2 because that's how many elements are actually in the array. But if we just call team KC to see what our team looks like, now Craig and Jason are there.
I think just for future reference while we're going through this, I think it's going to be more beneficial for people in general that are wanting JavaScript knowledge than it is to necessarily worry about this particular lab. Now, I know there's probably people out there right now that are doing this lab and they're hoping and praying that you're going to do the whole thing so they can.
Right. So we're going to get into that, right?
But the main reason for doing this is introducing a lot of people to JavaScript, or people that have just started with it that are kind of confused or stuck on it. But I will say, if you Google JavaScript documentation, you're going to find different resources for it, like MDN, Mozilla Developer Network. Methods, they'll have whole lists of methods. Dot push, pop, split, upcase, whatever. Those are all going to be different methods you're going to try to learn. Don't think you're going to have to memorize every one of them, but there's going to be different situations when you're trying to remove something from an array, add something to the array, change it to capital letters or lowercase letters, all kind of different things. And that's where those things come into play. When he did the push method, he was pushing one thing into the array. That's why every time he did it, he kept adding one more name to it. And the end result was when he showed the array, it was showing everything that he had added to it. So.
Thank you, Greg.
Yep.
So yes, good aside, because it's a chock full of information on MDM and all that stuff. So definitely a great place to learn. The W3 Schools is another one I use a lot. So we're going to add elements to an array. We're going to return the items from the array. And our second objective, we're going to iterate through an array, and we're going to pass an array as a function parameter. Okay. So, so pretty important. Deli needs some stuff. Okay, so let's look at our first objective here. We're going to build a function that a new customer will use when entering the deli. The function take a number, right, should accept 2 parameters: the current line of people along with the new person's name. The function should return a welcome message, including the new person's position in line, as well as welcome Ada, your number 1 in line. So that's just an example there. So if we jump to the code, let's look at this. Let's look for this number, this function, take a number. Okay, so if we jump back into the code, take a number is what we have here in line 1. The cat's deli line is the array of people that were already in line, and the second parameter here is the actual name that we're going to add to that list of people that's in line. And you can see here on this line 2, deli line, cat's deli line is an array that is in the test that already has people's names in it, and we're pushing the name that we are sending into this function. We're pushing that name onto the deli line array. Any questions so far about this lines 1 and 2? What's going on there?
Now, just to clarify, this is the completed lab already, right?
Yep.
So just for anybody that's looking at this and be like, okay, how the heck did we go from talking about Team Career Karma to this? When Jason did this originally, the answer wasn't in there. He had to add to the code they give you to make it work based on what the instructions were. So his lines, 2, 3, 4, mostly was all stuff you had to put in there to make it pass correctly, or pass correct. You muted yourself. Hang on, Jason.
Okay. Yep. That's totally correct. Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened.
I just wanted to clarify in case anybody's seeing this and being like, okay, where'd all that stuff come from? In a perfect scenario, we would have a blank canvas here for him to put in and show you guys how he got to that. But because he's already completed all this, he went back to find this. And for the sake of time, I don't think we all have 4 hours to go through this entire lab, right? So he's basically going to show you what he did to complete it and explain it as he goes. And then, like I said, feel free to jump in and ask questions in there. But if some of y'all are new to JavaScript and you're seeing this, don't let it freak you out, all this weird stuff. Just try to take in what he's explaining as he's breaking it down, because you're going to run into this stuff, and you can go back and watch this video later even. It'll make a lot more sense, I promise you, once you've had some practice doing this.
Exactly. And please ask me questions. Like, that's what I'm here for. Don't think your questions are dumb or petty or whatever. Just definitely ask me questions.
Can you push more than one element at a time?
That's a very good. You can. So you can push arrays into arrays. You can push objects into arrays. Are you asking like if 2 strings? You can. Yes. To answer your question, yes. I haven't done that much, but yes. To answer your question, you can.
Well, I noticed, like, for the names, I don't know if that was just for demonstration purposes, but you added the name, like, one name at a time.
Right.
Can you add, like, multiple names at a time, or would you have to do it that way?
That's a very good question. I'm just going to try it real fast.
I've
never done it.
I was trying to look up and see if there's I'm pretty sure there's a method you can do that, or there's a way to do that. Part of it too, you have to kind of understand and this is one thing I hate about trying to learn this, is it's not visual. Like when you're doing JavaScript, you can't see like what the output is really, right? So if this JavaScript was tied into, say, an app or a web page, and just imagine where it says input first name, last name, date of birth, all that stuff we do all the time when we sign up on an app, right? Or on a website. What the JavaScript part of that app is doing is when you input, it asks you for input. When you type in your first name and you type in your last name and you type in your date of birth and whatever you're inputting, it's basically assigning that to some sort of variable somewhere. Then it's going to use that, right? So I'm sure there will be instances where you're going to add multiple things that would inject into like an array of things.
Right.
So
a lot of times that may be it might be in a different data structure. Like you're exactly right, because I'm thinking about like if you're putting in, and I didn't mean to jump in, but like if you're putting in those different things, you're probably going to be pushing an object. You're probably going to have an array of objects where you're pushing in a whole set of data, your name versus social security number or whatever, date of birth, all those different things. And it's going in a different data type, but it's a very, so we can definitely push 2 things in at one time.
And something, you guys that are, at least with Flatiron, I don't know about other boot camps again, but you're going to get to a point where when you're doing Ruby, right? Ruby is an object-oriented language. So is JavaScript. There's going to be times you're going to learn other stuff too. You're going to learn like attributes, and you're going to have a certain object, but then you're going to have attributes. So you could have like Jason, and then his attributes are like maybe his last name, high school, job description, whatever things you attach, almost like traits you attach to that subject, right? So there's other stuff you're going to learn as you go. Again, I wouldn't get too worried or hung up about a lot of this, because again, if you go back to that documentation for JavaScript and look at a list, like Google JavaScript methods right now on your computer, and look up a list and how many there are. And I'm telling you, there's some really cool ones that when you run across a new one, it's like, wow, I wish I'd have known this existed when I was doing something, right? I recommend any language you're learning, documentation. Read the documentation. When you start learning a new language or keep it bookmarked, you should always go back, look at documentation, because there will be examples of something that you're trying to recreate to do your homework or a project or something, and you will find like, oh crap, let me try this. Right. Don't always assume that whatever school you're going to is going to give you every single piece of the puzzle. Some of it is going to require you to do a little bit of digging and documentation for JavaScript, Python, Ruby, and then even frameworks and libraries like React and Vue and Rails and whatever. They have documentation sites. I'm telling you, it's a gold mine. You want to check that stuff out, because you will want to use that. You will want to bookmark that stuff.
Right, but to your point, like you said earlier, don't try to remember stuff. Use the stuff. Like when you get into the documentation, there are probably only, if there's 100 methods for arrays, I probably only use 10 regularly, and there's some that I've only used once I started using. There's some methods that I've only used when I started using Redux. Different frameworks that I didn't even use these JavaScript methods until then. So don't try to go in and remember all this stuff, because as a software developer, you're going to be expected to Google stuff. And I know it sounds really cliche, you're problem solving, and I know you hear all that stuff, and your intuition is to like, no, I need to learn this stuff, or I need to memorize this stuff. But seriously, you're not going to be expected to memorize, past the basic, maybe I'd say, and I'm just coming off the hip, maybe 10 methods, for arrays or objects and stuff like that. Anything else that's nuanced, you're just gonna have to look it up, and there's definitely no shame in looking that stuff up.
Well, it's like I was saying earlier with the muscle memory, there's going to be certain things, like I said, maybe if you didn't take typing in school, but if you think back to when you were a little kid and you learned your ABCs and your numbers, right? You could watch Sesame Street and you could see numbers and you could see letters, and you might recognize what an A, a B, and a C is. But when you start writing that out, remember we had to practice how to draw and write out letters, right? And it became, you had to practice, and it became muscle memory. Now, if you took a piece of paper and I started telling you something, you were taking notes, you wouldn't even think twice about it. You just sit down and write it down, right? Same thing with this. The more you do the same repetitive things that you're going to use common things, you're going to get to where when you need it, you just throw it on, you just put it out there. But it takes repetition to get that. Don't think you're going to know everything just because you went over it once or twice. It's going to take repetition. But don't feel like you have to memorize everything, because I promise you there's people out there right now making $150,000 a year as a
I think you just lagged.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I got this weird hiccup on my computer every once in a while for about 4 seconds. It just kind of.
You said people are making 150 out there right now, and what?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I know people that are making 150 grand and they still spend half their day on Stack Overflow and Google looking up stuff.
Absolutely.
I have a guy that's actually here locally that's a Rails dev. He makes 140 some thousand a year. I meet with him once a week because he's mentoring me, like helping me 1 hour a week. And he said that don't think that, you're trained to make everything beautiful. All your code's supposed to be pretty and dry and all this different stuff. He says, but when you go out there and get a job, you'll find out that most places it's just a huge pile of garbage. And you're asked to be brought in on a team and just try to help like maintain it. One more fire hose to try to just keep stuff working. In a perfect scenario, everything would be coded by the same people, but it's not. There's different teams, there's different people, there's different things, and they're trying to maintain it all, work together. So there's not going to be some universal perfect way you're going to do stuff, but you can always research in Google and find examples of what you're trying to make to help you get what you're trying to make work, right?
Yeah. Hey, I got a question.
Yes.
All right. I'm at the current line function.
Oh, 17? Oh, my thing is 17.
Yes,
okay.
yes, line 17. Okay. When we start, we created the variable for the function. Okay, the next line, line 18, it says let inline equal, that's an empty array.
Right.
Okay, what's the purpose? Like for some incidents, we might start out with say var output equals quotation marks. What's the purpose of doing that? Just starting out with an empty variable.
So
I just want the principle actually.
Okay, so you start off with this empty array, so if we can jump down to the for loop, right?
Right.
Because I'll tell you why you should instantiate it up here, right? And instantiating means you just set it equal to, you set inline up. You just setting it up to exist, right? On line 18. And the reason why you don't want it, so if we look at it, right, and again, I haven't seen this in months, so I'm literally, as you're asking me, I'm literally looking over it, trying to figure out how to answer your question, right? But if we look down on line 23, this is the first time we actually are using that array that we established, right?
Right.
And we're saying inline.push, and we're actually taking the number of people in line, and we're saying, okay, so what we're doing is we're giving the number, the person's place in line, and we're taking the cat's array, and we're actually putting the name of the person in the line. That's what this means.
One's the name. I mean, one's the number, and the other one's the name.
Exactly. So what happens is, that's a great question, right? Because you think, okay, when I use it, maybe I should instantiate it, right? Maybe I should say, let that thing happen down here. But what would happen is every time you would go through the loop, you would be instantiating it again. You'll be reestablishing it again, and you won't get everybody that's in line.
That empty array, if you don't mind me jumping in,
No.
The empty array, when you set it up, think of it as a container. And whenever you start with anything, your container doesn't have anything in there. If you came into work at this deli, as soon as you unlock that front door, that line for people, there's nobody there. But you still have to have the line has to be there to put people, right? So you start off with nothing, and then as you go through and people are added to the line, it's going to add them one at a time. But you still started with nothing, but you still needed a container to start that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, but I'm just thinking about the principles, and I see that now, but it's funny because it was never explained, and I guess again you got to research and that you got to keep playing around with it, and it's okay, and I get it, but it's just like wow, that's a good principle to understand and know.
Yeah, I mean it's Flatiron was awesome. Flatiron was definitely awesome. And I get a lot of, I kind of get a lot of the reasons why they did what they did, even when it's like absent information, right?
Right.
Sometimes the gulf between understanding things sometimes it's more narrow, sometimes it's broader, right? You're like, I just think they should do a better job of kind of like explaining how wide the gulf might be, or kind of like what the expectations are. But they definitely, and I guess this is kind of where you should have, where they expect you to have a certain amount of, knowledge of JavaScript or whatever coming in, because stuff like this is nuanced. So
I was going to say that's not like the first lab you're going to run into, right? I mean, you kind of progressively work your way up to get to this lab. if you had to do this, this was your first lab.
Oh yeah.
Pre-course, there'd probably be people that never would just like, forget this. I'll go back to bed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good question though. Did we clear it up a little bit for you?
You did clear it up, and I just want to know, where else, where I can find information like that, because you can't find that in a book. That's just something that I guess you got to know through just programming.
You know what? I knew this before I got into Flatiron, but I figured it out because, like, initially before I got that kind of nuanced understanding, I would declare this variable down here in this for loop, right? And when I would go to print this out, I would only get one name every time, right? I get the first person and just that name. I get the second person and just that name, and I'm like, why am I only getting one name? And it's like, because I'm instantiating this thing every single time it's going through the loop. Right. So I said, I literally when I got it, I can't remember specifically when I got it, but I probably took it out of the for loop and put it here. I probably took it out of the for loop and put it there. And then once I finally got it to work through trial and error a lot of times, then it kind of made sense. It's like, okay, now it makes sense why they put it there. And then I asked myself, well, if they kind of explain this explicitly in some passage or some, a JavaScript book, would I have grasped it? Would I have understood it then, just them explaining it to me? The way I learned, probably not, because I probably would have been like, what? Put it where? Instantiate what? Out of the loop? I don't scope. What are you talking about? Right? I probably wouldn't have understood that, but it's through trial and error that I kind of figured that out. So, I guess the expectations of them have to kind of be tempered, and some of this stuff is kind of like, I guess the overall idea that they're generally trying to drive home is that in the wild, when you get a job, you're going to have to figure a lot of stuff out that's just, that may not seem fair, or you might need to put daisy chain a bunch of information together. And that's just kind of the overall principle that I kind of take from it. So, but one thing is don't get frustrated. Don't get frustrated, and you're not the only one that kind of asks those questions.
And also, my next question is: so when we're talking about that inline array, is that also dealing like a scope type of issue? Is what we're saying?
In what regard?
It's inside of your function, but it's outside of the for loop.
It's outside the for loop, right? Okay.
Right. So I guess, like he said, if he would have put it inside the loop, it would have done it. It would have done it over and over again every time he instantiated, or every time the loop ran. That's why it's outside, but it's still inside the function.
It's inside the function. I see that.
Talking about line 18,
right?
And then inline is just what he named that variable.
Right. Yeah, I get that point.
Yeah. Just didn't want anybody listening maybe to think that inline meant something. It's just what he called it. Also, when you're doing a lot of these, I'm sorry, Jason, I just wanted to throw this out there because I've seen this before.
No, please go ahead.
When you're doing a lot of these tutorials and these fresh start learning things, and they talk about var this and a variable is a var, all this stuff. var is actually, for JavaScript, it's kind of old school convention. Now it's const and let. So const is a constant variable that once you set it, it stays whatever you set it to. Let is kind of the old school var that is allowed to be changed throughout the whole that program. So you're going to see const and let. So if you're writing code nowadays with JavaScript, I don't believe you're going to use var anymore, right?
Yep, that's correct. Yep, var let is let. So you have block scope and you have function scope. I'm not going to get too much into that, but basically nowadays you want to say let instead of var, and you can use var. You can use var within like a for loop or something like that. Mm-hmm. Let is definitely something that so I could have said inline here. I could say inline, just instantiate it, and didn't even have to give it a data type. I couldn't do that with const. If I use const, you have to give it a value initially, and const cannot be changed. Let can be mutated, but if I try to do this with const and with no value here, I wouldn't have been able to do it.
And also, let's say you Google something, right, and you're trying to find an example because you're working on something. There's more than one way to to write the same thing sometimes, or a lot of times, right? So there's new versions of JavaScript that come out. There'll be arrow functions, right? So you could write something with an arrow function, or you could have, there's always people working on ways of making it to where you have to type less to get the same result. So if you run across something that was done 5 or 6 years ago versus something that was done last week, they might look like two completely different things that do the exact same thing because of the availability of new stuff, or one person's style of how they got it to do what they wanted to. So if you're ever looking at something and yours is working, but then you see another version of it, somebody else's product or something, and it's not exactly like yours, it's not always a bad thing. And when you go through these boot camps, sometimes they will actually ask you, when you do an assessment, to change something, or how else could you have done this, or things like that too. So it's not like there's always this cookie cutter, only one way something has to be exactly to be right every time. Sometimes there's multiple ways to get stuff to work.
Yeah.
I was helping somebody with some JavaScript a few weeks ago, and we got something working, and then they went in to go do their assessment in campus assessment, and the guy there said it was wrong, even though it was working for us. So I don't, I'm just saying, if you see something that's not exactly like yours, if yours is working and the output is giving you what you're supposed to, it might just be one version of how it could work, right?
Yep. Any more questions on anything specific? Because I know we jumped down, but I appreciate your question, Aaron. I know we jumped down. Any more questions on anything specific?
Yeah, could you work the program? Could you run the code for us?
Sure.
And the little boogie cat there, disco cat, has nothing to do with it. That's not part of the Deli Counter.
Yeah, I know. I'm actually in Flatiron right now. I have my first interview Thursday.
Nice.
Cool.
And I'm doing a pre-course, and I was wondering if he could give me some advice on the technical interview.
Let me see. So I'm thinking back to my during my technical interview, we definitely did Deli Counter. We went over this. I think the interviewer asked me, basically kind of like, what is this doing on line that? What is that doing? What does this mean? They may say, hey, run your code. Okay, good. It's working, everything. Okay, on line 11, if you took the return word out, what might happen? On line 11, when you said currently serving and the thing that's in, what is the $sign and these brackets? Like, what does that, what does that do? They may just
so they basically just want to know, like, everything that they had taught you in the pre-course, like up to that point, they want to know if you really got a grasp on what they was talking about and all the symbols and everything.
Yeah, and basically, I mean, to be candid, right? There's a million ways we can find the answers to this Deli Counter thing, right? I can go on a Fiverr and ask somebody to do it for $5, or whatever. They basically want to know that, okay, you got the test to pass. You may even watch a tutorial that took you line by line through it, and you watch the tutorial, you pause it and code it, and watch the tutorial, and got that way, right? And that's not illegal or immoral. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like, okay, if we jump out of sync of your code and you're out of the flow of your code, can you tell me what's going on with your code?
Exactly.
Because I've written code where I'm like in a flow, I'm coding and I'm coding, it's 100 lines of code and I'm warm and I know what it means. And I look back the next day and I'm like, wait, what the heck is going on? And I got to go back and like have that conversation with myself. Like, how was I thinking? What was I doing? So yeah, they just want to know that we can jump in the middle of your code in a line that you knew what you went on Google and you went on MDM and and you figured out what that meant. But do you know what that means today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just Jason, I'm going to assume you did the on campus, so the immersive, right? Or in person?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yep.
Just for anybody listening, just so there's no confusion, if you do software engineering with Flatiron online, full-time or part-time or even self-paced, there is not a technical interview. Okay. If you do it in person, if you live in a city with a campus and you want to do it, it's limited seating. They only have so many classroom seats, right? So they're going to make sure they get the cream of the crop in there. If you do that, they're going to point you at one of these labs from the free prep course, and you're going to come in there, and just like Jason was saying, they're going to have you, they're going to do an assessment on that code to make sure you have a good understanding of what you did and why it works, because they only have so many chairs, right? Online, they can just get another instructor and add 30 more people, and boom, you got an online course, right? So they're going to be a lot more picky. And I think the data science, even online, if you're looking at data science, does have an assessment, because they don't have as many cohorts. They don't have as many people doing that as they do software engineering. Just letting you guys know, if you're looking into it, you're going to do online software engineering, you still want to know this stuff. You still want to learn it, but don't freak out like, oh my God, I have to do this right here in front of somebody and explain it. They're a lot more particular with the immersive in person for that reason. Okay. I hope that.
Yeah, mine. I'm glad that you said it, because I'm doing. I would like to do the part-time online. That's what I'm actually doing right now.
Yep. If you have an interview scheduled with Flatiron and you're looking at part-time or full-time online, your interview is going to be a fit interview. It's going to be a personality test. They're going to talk to you. All you have to do, be polite, almost treat it like a job interview, kind of just be polite, be friendly, and make sure they know like your passion, or like, I really want to learn this. I've been studying, I've been working on my own stuff. Tell them whatever you want to tell them, but they're trying to make sure that you have the right mindset, that you're getting ready to dive into a boot camp for the next however many months.
Nice.
If you go in there and you're like, well, I figured, hey, what the heck, the ISA, what's going to hurt if I can't do this? I mean, I'm not going to have to pay for it, right? I mean, I guess I'll give it a shot. Well, guess what? That's not what you want to say. Yeah. You follow me?
True.
So
I got you.
Think about all the reasons why this is going to change your life. This is what you want to do. Take that energy and broadcast that energy to them on that interview. Just let them know, like, man, I really want to learn. I heard great things about this school, and that's why I want to attend. I know people that have gone to the school, or they're going to the school, and I just hear great things about it. And I'm really looking forward to getting started. You know what I'm saying? Almost like a job interview where you're like, I've heard about this company, really excited. Anyway, I distracted off the conversation, but I just want to let you know, if you guys are looking at doing that, unless you're doing it in person or doing data science, don't stress it too much. You still got time to still be learning this stuff before you even have a day to start.
Cool. Any more questions about specific parts of this, or any questions in general? I mean, we're not ending the call now. I'm a little bit more focused when I have direct questions, or I could just keep walking through it.
Yeah, man, just keep walking through it.
Okay, cool. So we stopped on, we formed our function online. We want to take a number, it takes the Deli count array and a name, pushes the name to the end, adds the name to the end of the array, the last person that comes in. And we take that name and we say, welcome, and your number. Is everybody clear on line 3? This Deli line, cast Deli line, dot index of name +1. Does everybody know what that means? If you don't worry about it. Not don't worry about it, but don't be shy about asking about it.
Actually, that's going to give the name of the person. That +1 is because the index starts at 0 when we need to add 1.
Very close. You are 90% right. So index of, and we put a name in here, it's actually going to give us the index where that name is found.
Okay.
So you're right there. And then, like you said, because the indices start at 1 in an array, we're going to add 1 to get the real life position, right? Because we don't count from 0, we count from 1. So we're going to add 1 to every index. But yep.
Something else too. If you guys are sitting there watching this, and don't be afraid to ask even the most newbie of question, because this is being recorded, and there's going to be other people that are going to watch this later, and they're going to have questions, but they don't have a way to ask them, right? So every single thing that you guys ask, if Jason's able to explain or answer, could potentially help somebody else out later, right? So if, not that we want to be here for 8 hours, right, doing everything, but just keep that in mind. If you do have a question, don't feel awkward about just asking. Just ask.
Right, and I know it sounds cliche, but there are no stupid questions, huh?
Well, since you said that, how did this start? Like, how much did you add? Because I already know this is finished.
How much did I add? I can't. I can't even. Let me see if I could. How do we pull up the?
I don't know if you might not be able to show it to him if you, unless you went and found the original GitHub repo and just brought it up.
Yeah,
it's going to be blank, right?
Yeah. But I'm trying to. You know what? When I was there, I was trying to do a. I tried to do a lab over, and it wouldn't let me since I forked it.
Yeah, don't go to your GitHub. Go to Flatiron's GitHub because it should have the original.
Oh,
you could probably just actually Google the name of that lab,
right?
And I bet you would find the link to take you right to the job because if you see the original and you open up the GitHub repo, you should see the original template of the problem before you added any code to it, right?
Yep. I'm pulling it up.
I don't even think there was a template. It was just basically words. Just saying.
Just a README.
Just a README. Yeah.
Create. Comment it out. Put your code here, or create an array, or whatever the heck. Excuse me.
It didn't have any. It was empty. Didn't have anything except for the last part.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Some of them are literally a blank page, aren't they? They want you to make it from scratch.
Yep. You guys are jogging my memory because I don't remember how much I put it.
If you can't find it, for anybody that's out there wondering that, when you open up the free Flatiron pre-course, and when you get to that Deli lab, that Deli Counter lab, you're going to see how it is to begin with, right? You're going to see it's going to start you at the beginning, whatever the part of it you have to create. So hopefully between you learning what you did up to that point and then seeing this video and seeing his code may help you understand it better or get past it or whatever. Do not just copy what he's got on the screen and just get past the lab. Trust me, you're only screwing yourself. Figure it out. Use this as a reference to see why yours wasn't working. But please do yourself a favor and figure this out, because it just gets more complicated and convoluted from here. And if you don't keep building those building blocks of learning, you're going to end up getting to a point where you've knocked your legs out from under yourself. You know what I'm saying?
Yep, you're right.
Yeah, it's just going to
get heavier. Tempting. Trust me, it's tempting when you're stuck on a lab for 2 days to just Google the hell out of it and find someone else's repo and be like, oh, here it is.
Yeah,
it's I'm being honest, it's tempting. But if
I did that. Initially. I was stuck for 3 days, and I did that, but then I felt like I cheated myself, and I got a guy from Australia to help me, and he basically explained the whole 9 yards to me and helped me set it up, and nice. I did the coding, but I have a better understanding of how to get there, how to start it out, where at first I didn't know what to do. I knew a little bit, but it was still confusing.
Hey, this isn't like, I'm speaking from my experience with Flatiron. They do try to kind of flow you into, like, make it a little harder, a little bit, a little bit more. But there's a few of the jumps from one lab to the next where you're like, holy crap, am I on the wrong lesson? Did I actually skip 5 lessons? Jason, am I right?
Oh man.
Sometimes you're just like, I just went through a time warp.
Man, I think it was the Redux lab. I mean, this is how far are you along, Craig, in Flatiron?
embarrassed to admit that I'm still on the second section with SQL and things.
Ruby and Rails, and so not. Do you haven't gotten to Rails yet?
I haven't gotten to Rails yet on Flatiron, which is stupid because I'm doing Rails on my own. I do stuff for school and then I do my own stuff, and I'm actually made a Rails app already, but I figured when I get to it with the school stuff, it'll just make it easier to get through that. But it's a whole nother Jerry Springer show to talk about. I had a very eventful year last year with parents passing away, and I got behind and I had to start over and different things. Anyway, if anybody knows me, they already know the story. So I'm still doing it. I'm actually doing self-paced now.
Okay.
So, but I started off doing part-time, then I was doing full-time. Now I'm doing self-paced. So if anybody has any questions about online software engineering Flatiron, I'm like the Van Wilder of Flatiron over here. I may never finish.
I'm not laughing, but Van Wilder, that's funny. Yeah, way down, and I think it was module 4 when you get into React and Redux, and there was a lab that was like that set of labs. I was like, wait, is this the 5th lab, or like what happened? It just went from like 1 to 10. I was like, what's going on here? So anyway, guys, any other questions? Should I go step? I mean, let's see. We set up take a number. The first function between lines 1 and 5 sets up the number, takes a person's name, puts it in the array for the line, the people in the line, and it gives you your number, right? Take a number, that's what that's doing. And it's returning lineup, which is this function here that actually displays the name, welcomes you, gives you your number in line.
Okay. Hey, Craig, do you have the actual questions that, when we're starting the lab? I'm looking
the README?
The README, yeah. So
here it is.
Okay, yeah. We're on take a number. Okay, build. If we can you give me the logic? I wanted the logic behind how should I attack if I'm new and I see this. Okay, what's the first thing I should be thinking? That's what some of the beginners should know. Okay, how do I attack this right here?
Right.
And what are the first things I should be doing?
I would interject real quick too, just for anybody looking at this that doesn't understand what they're looking at. When you pull a repo, when you're doing a lesson with Flatiron, on the README file is going to be the instruction. If you're on the learn.co page and you're working out of the little IDE on the side, it's the same stuff you're going to see on the left side of the screen for the instruction there. So just for anybody watching, if they're not familiar with this is the same thing you would see on Flatiron's website next to what you're working on, but it's also on the README if you were to pull the entire repo like to your editor, like Jason's got here.
Great point. Sorry. Great point. Very great point. So to answer your question, Aaron, so I would do something like this, literally. So build a function, okay? Now serving. So I know I need to build a function called now serving. So I do something like this. Now serving equals, right? And now here's my function, right?
Right.
Here's my function. Boom. Okay. So now serving is a function. It accepts the functions should accept the current line so right. So it's going to accept this, right? And that's going to be from our test file. So we can just plug that in and return. Okay, so it's only accepting one argument and return the first person's name in line, and then remove the individual line. Okay. So
that return. So I'm thinking this out with you. So then and the return the first person in the line. So in my return statement, I'm gonna have I guess return template, a literal template with I guess what first person blase blase. Am I saying
explain that to me a little bit better.
Okay.
Or not better, but I just want to understand what you're saying.
Okay, and it says, and return the first person in line, and then remove that individual from that line. So at my return, should I be working on my return next?
So good, very good question, because that set of instructions is pretty loaded, and fortunately JavaScript actually has an array method that does that for us. right? So if we jump back over to the code, and I just want to show you that for this particular instance. If we jump back over to the code now serving, right?
Right.
So here's our function, right? So we want to do a few things. Here's one thing that you definitely want to keep in mind. They're called edge cases. Have you guys heard of edge cases? Have you heard of an edge case? And if you haven't, this is something that I learned toward the end. But an edge case is something where the function, where something that may not apply to the function, right? That you want to have to consider, right? So let's just say nobody's in line, right? This thing is telling you to build a function for whoever's being served. But let's say nobody's in line, right? So there's nobody to serve. You want to build something that's called an edge case. And this is what we're doing here on the first line. Here's our line 6 is our now serving function, right?
Right.
But this line 8 is saying, hey, if there's nobody in line, right? Or if the deli line dot length equals 0, saying there's no people in that array, we want to return something. Hey, there's nobody to be served, right? So that's adjusting for the edge cases, and that's something that you're gonna, you'll if you're not doing it yet, as you mature as a developer, you'll start to do stuff like that, right? And that kind of makes sense.
Okay, so it's set up like a story?
Exactly, right? So if you walk into a place and you're the first one to open it, come into the deli, right? You want to look up and see there's nobody waiting to be served, right? So you want to kind of think through things like that to put into your code, and because that's called an edge case. Like if there's if the code is not going to work exactly how it's designed to work, if there is somebody to return, or if there's not, if there's something in the array, you don't want to think about the function as if something's always going to be in the array. Basically,
you said edge case.
It's called the edge case, right?
Okay, I'm gonna Google that later.
Right. So let's say you build a function that takes in numbers, right, and puts numbers in a certain in order, right, from lowest to highest. What if somebody puts in a word?
Okay.
Right? You want to say, hey, that's not a letter, or that's not a number, right? So that would be an edge case that you just kind of want to build in, because you don't want to think about things being idealistic all the time. So anyway, so that's what we did on line 8. If cat's deli line dot length, if the length of this array is 0, then we want to say nobody's waiting to be served because there's nobody in line. Else, and this is where we really get into the functionality of it, right? We want to return currently serving. Now, this is the part where if we jump back over to the README and you asked about, and it should return the first person in line and then remove that individual from the line, right? So if we jump back to the code, we want to do two things. We want to return that first person, who was really the last person was really the first person to go in the array, right? And then we want to remove them out of the array. That's two different things, right? That we have to do.
Right.
This shift method does that exactly. Shift does two things. Shift is you have push and you have pop. Push pushes something or puts something at the end of the array.
Right.
Dot pop takes the last thing off the array.
Right.
Right. Then you have something called shift and unshift that are intertwined. They're paired just like pop and push. Unshift puts something at the beginning of the array.
Right.
Shift takes that thing from the beginning of the array. Right. Now that kind of, that's something to kind of get your head around, because to this day, I mix unshift and shift up to this day. I always do. And most people do. But what shift also does is it, in addition to taking the first thing off of the front, it actually returns that thing. It doesn't just take it off the front and throw it in the garbage. It actually captures that thing. So this cat's deli line dot shift is literally not only taking the first thing off the deli line array, but it's returning it also.
I don't get that. If it's taking it out, how is it? Because return current. Okay, I see it take. Okay, if we got an array we got two people in, and
right.
Say for instance, I got Tom at 0 and I got Aaron at 1. Right. It's gonna take the 0. It's gonna take the 0 index out first, right? Tom.
It's gonna take the first one out. Shift. Yeah, it's gonna take the first one out. Right.
It's not really taking it. It's just borrowing it.
No, it's going to take it out. It's going to alter the array. It's going to take it out. the array is not going to have that in it anymore. So it does.
Where is it? Okay, you said it's. I'm trying to get around the concept of what you just explained. If it's taking it out, you said is it recycling it again or?
So here's the thing. Let me just show you this real fast, and maybe seeing it will probably illustrate it a little bit better. If we did something like this, and we're gonna pop it, right? Let's just say Nate, right? And let's just do. So if I did team, right? If I did team pop, right? It takes it off, and it actually returns the thing that we took off. It doesn't just throw it away. But now if I look at team doesn't have Nate anymore. So it's one thing that you could, there are things that take it and just throws it away. It just takes it off of it. It takes it out of the array and says it's not there anymore.
Console.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
He returns it to the console, what you're saying.
It returns it, right. Returning it to the console is they're not kind of like we can console log something that just shows something, but console logging doesn't return it. But yes, it returns it to the console, or it actually returns a value. So when we do, look, I want you to look at it like this. Team.pop is equal to Nate. It's literally equal to Nate because it's going to return Nate because Nate was in the team array. Right? So it doesn't just take Nate out and throw him away and say, okay, team has two people in it, Jason and Eric. It literally takes Nate out, but it also returns and gives you Nate. So if we jump back up to the code here on line 11, when I say shift, I'm saying, hey, give me the first person on the Deli line and return that person's name. I'm going to take him out of the array from the front, but I'm also going to give him to you as a value.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Okay, I get it. It's going to return the name. Okay.
Right. And the return here, it's the return here is really so I return the whole line so it says it.
Right.
Gotcha. There's almost two return here. There's a built-in return with shift on the array, but the return here is saying, hey, return the statement with currently serving Nate or whoever the person is that's being pulled out.
Okay, that's perfect because I see the logic in it. Okay, well, I'm taking them out, but it's also going to return it showing its name.
Yeah, it's literally taking that person out of line and giving me that person.
Giving you that person, right?
So it's doing double duty. It's taking him out of line. He's not going to be in a line. It's not going to mess up the length of the array or anything, and it's also giving me him.
One thing that's cool about the way Flatiron, a lot of their labs are though too, you could actually visualize this whole scenario, right? So you got people in line now serving whatever number. Same thing like if you're at the DMV or something, you're waiting to go up to the counter. It's got the array of the people in line. It's got the person you're serving. And then once you take their order and they get out of line, you still got everybody else in line. Or once the line is empty, then everybody's been served, right? So it's just like sitting there waiting for more things to be put into the array to serve more people, just like if it was a real line at a deli or a real line at the DMV or whatever. So a lot of their labs they do, if you could kind of visualize what would be going on in that scenario, because technically if you had an app of some kind, like when you go to get a haircut, sometimes they're like, oh, did you sign in on the app already? They have a queue of people in line. So theoretically, this could be kind of the basis for you designing an app of something for a deli, right? This is something that maybe there's a screen up there, and when you come in and you sign in and you go on that list in line so they can keep track of who's in line in what order, and now they're serving the next person. Kind of like when they write your name on a cup at Starbucks, right?
Right.
So these are all potentially real world scenarios. So if you think about it like that, once somebody gets their order, they're not still in line unless they go back and get in line again.
And it also made me kind of think about, this is probably why when DMV is advertising for a software engineering position, this is what the software engineer is doing, right? Like stuff like, this is, a little bit more advanced, but like you can see the application of this.
And God bless whoever takes that job.
Oh yeah, exactly. Exactly. So yeah, so that's the now serving, right? This is it. We figured out who we're serving, and another lesson, quick lesson too here is to be very semantical with your function names. I know you probably saw that or heard that already, but now serving tells you that, right? We're going to show you who we're now serving. It's very semantical. It makes a whole bunch of sense when you look at the function, you know what it's doing.
That's actually considered best practice too, because you never know who's going to come along after you've written code and try to decipher what you did. Always try to name your variables or whatever. Try to, use camel case or use snake case. Like in Ruby, you'll use snake case, which is an underline between each word. Camel case is when you capitalize the first letter after the first word. Yeah. But yeah, anytime you could be descriptive, even if that variable is like 28 characters long, if it's better to be descriptive of what it is you're doing, because it'll keep you from getting yourself confused. Because if you just named everything A and B and C and D and E, I'm just like saying that for anybody listening who's new to understanding variables, don't be afraid to name them whatever makes you keep track of them better.
Yep. Right. Yep.
Okay. All right. So when that current line is called, that variable, that argument, Cat's Deli line is a person's name.
Oh, line 11.
No, I'm at 17.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah. So this is the current line. So this is the actual line where the current line is actually going to be the whole line of people, right? And you can kind of visualize it because we're taking in the Cat's Deli line. We're taking in the whole array, right? So that gives us a clue of saying, okay, the current line is taking in the whole array. So we're probably going to take this JavaScript data type, right, and convert it into something that's plain English, that's palatable, right? That's what that tells me, right? I'm going to take this line that has indices and names or whatever, and I'm going to display it in a way that I might see myself at DMV or the number that I have on my ticket in DMV, right? So that's where we jump back to your original question of, instantiating the inline variable with an empty array, and then we start to do this stuff. So yeah, talk to me. Any questions with that?
Jason, Crayola had asked in chat earlier what the $ was for.
Oh, and this is the this is called. Say that again.
The literal template.
Yes, this is and this is to take to convert any letter or string. They call this. Oh man, you got to. It's so funny. When you use this stuff, you just forget the technical names of this stuff. But it's called string interpolation. That's what it's called. String interpolation. And yes, you could. So this allows you to use your variables in here without having to do the concatenation with the double quotes and doing the plus and put your variables in between. It allows you to just say, hey, I want to quote this, and this thing is going to change depending on it's going to vary based on the variables.
That's something too to pay attention to, again, for new folks. That little setup there between like lines 22 to 24 is something you're going to use whenever you are cycling through like an array. Your index 0 is always the first thing. And what that's doing is it's allowing you to continue each time to go to the next thing, right? So you're going to use that if let's say you had an array with 10 names on it and you wanted to return that and list them 1 through 10 with a number before them. Things like this little setup is how you're going to structure that so that your return matches it. And when your very first thing on the array is index 0, so you can't just return it with the same index that position of that element, right? Because your first person is going to say 0 next to it. So if you're asked, and you will be asked in some of these projects or some of these lessons to output like a list of things, I think even the one with the dwarves on the JavaScript on the pre-course, there's the one where there's the dwarf names and then the Captain Planet and all that stuff. You guys will see that if you do the free stuff. But that is a similar setup to what you're going to see as you go through those lessons. I'm just giving people a heads up because that is something you're going to want to do your homework on and understand how that works, because you are going to use that again.
Okay.
Right.
Hey, if in the beginning I was confused between the I in my for statement.
Your for loop,
And the difference between the I and the cast deli dot length. Now, knowing that we're trying to increment between the names and the numbers. So I is basically going to be the item of the number.
Usually people use I when you're dealing with the index. It's just a common variable to define when you do an index. So by him declaring I equals 0, he's starting it out as 0. But because he used a var, so it can change, right? Cat's Deli line is what if you scroll up, is what he assigned to be the array of the people's names in the line when he made the array.
I didn't see that.
When you see it down here, technically he doesn't have to use I, right, Jason? You could have used W. You could have used elephant. You could have used anything. But it's it's a lot simpler just to throw that I in there because that's for index. It's a common practice.
It's like a convention in just a general convention.
Yeah, it doesn't specifically mean anything. It's just what he assigned it to and he's using.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, I got another question. If you go back up, okay, at line 20, what was it, 23? 23 right here. At that I, where it says Cat Deli line bracket, the I in there is for
so that's the current index.
That's the current index. So we want to display that the name with that current index, or I'm lost.
Okay, no problem. So what we're doing here is, so let's just say we have Craig is the 0th index, Aaron is the first index, Philip is the second index, and QC is the 3rd, right? What we're doing is we're saying, hey, if Craig is the 0th index, right, on line 23, I'm saying I plus 1. So if Craig is the 0th index, I'm adding 1 to his index, which would be 0 plus 1, and I'm putting a dot there, and then I'm saying I still want the 0th index in the Deli line array. So I'm saying it's going to read Craig is 1 and Craig.
I see it. You're just basically, you still want the 0 index, but you want the number to show. You want number 1 instead of 0.
Exactly, because us humans, we're used to seeing the first person in line being number 1, not 0. So I'm just labeling. We're essentially adding 1 to the index because the index is shifted down 1, starting at 0 versus 1.
And that's kind of what I was trying to explain a few minutes ago. Was you're going to see this kind of setup whenever you're using indexes, because, like he said, typically the first person in line is not 0, right? We think a 0 is empty or nothing.
Okay.
So what that's doing is that's going to virtually make me number 1 in the line, even though I'm on index 0. So it's always going to have that plus 1.
What I was confused, what I'd forgotten was my other lesson where how to get a value from an array, and instead of using you got dots in the bracket. So we're using the bracket to call that value from the Cat's Deli line.
Right. The array.
Am I saying that right?
Yep. You're hitting that array. So if we go back down to team bracket 0, right? Right. I'm getting Jason because Jason is at the 0th index of the team array. If we look down in the console, right? So that's exactly what we're doing up here. We're just saying as we iterate through and we increment this this index value, we're going to be calling that the element at that index in the Deli line array, just like I called, the element, the index down at this array down there.
And on your line 22, when you're declaring I equals 0 to start, and then when you have I, so as long as I is less than the length, you keep doing it. So what that's doing is it's taking however many elements are in the array, and as long as it's greater than 0, it's going to keep going. But once it's equal to 0, then it's going to stop because there's no more people left in the line.
Or actually, it's gonna. So exactly. Or basically, it's counting up too. Because let's say there's 5 people in the Deli line array, we're gonna add 1 to I until we get to 4. And because once we go around and add 1 more, and 5 is less than 5, it's gonna pad out. It's gonna jump out of this for loop and go in down here. So actually, what we're doing is, what we're really doing here is the inline on line 18. When we instantiate inline in the for loop, we're actually we're making a list, right? Because we're huh?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You see it, right?
You're making a list.
Right. We're literally making a list of people, and we're pushing it in. And because because everything is the next person is going to be pushed to the end of the array. The first person is going to be at the front. The last person is going to be at the end. And we're literally making a list with the number dot the name, the number dot the name, the number dot the name. And then down here in inline, we're saying inline, and then we're joining everything in that list. This dot join. We're joining everything in that list with a comma between it.
Okay.
Right. So I'm saying the first person, I want to put a comma between it. Then I want to add a little bit of space. Then the second person, the name, 3 dot the name, comma, 4 dot the name, comma. And then in line 26, we're returning the line is currently, and then since we put, we updated the value of inline to be the join thing, it's going to just literally list the list of people.
Could you say that the array Cat's Deli line is where you start, and then inline is an empty array, like a container, and as you take people out of the array and you line them up, they go into the inline? Like, is it almost like you have an empty array that you're feeding people from the other array?
Yep. Yeah, exactly what they're doing. Because there's a convention in their practice too, in JavaScript and just programming in general. You never want to mutate the original source of data, right? You want to take from that source of data and manipulate it, but you never want to mutate the actual source.
Okay.
Right. So we're not going to change. And when I say mutate, okay, in one of these, we're adding people to the Cat's Deli line, right? So that's fine because we're adding people to it, right? But down in this particular instance, when we're displaying something, we're just showing who's online. So we're going to make a new array to display that. We don't really want to, and there's something called separation of concerns. I don't want to get too off into the weeds, but this function current line is really kind of what's called like a display kind of function. You'll get into it once you get into like React and stuff like that. And then when you're displaying stuff, you just really want to just grab from the source, put it into a new bucket and show it. You don't want to be manipulating stuff somewhere where you're displaying. You're just kind of mixing concerns. It's one thing if you're adding people or you're taking people off the line. That's more of a functional thing, more so in the background. But if you just displaying, just make a new array like inline and just display that.
Okay, I see the logic behind that. Okay. That makes sense.
Okay, yeah, I didn't realize this was that short looking back on it.
Yeah, I think this lab, the reason why a lot of people struggle with it is because, like we were talking about earlier, I think it's a blank slate when you start.
Right.
And for you to have to follow the README and follow the instructions and add each piece of it to get it to do what you want it to pass, a lot of people are just lost because especially with some of the previous labs where you already have so much laid out for you and you're just kind of filling in a couple lines of code to get something to pass.
Right.
This is one of the big
kind of structure there.
Yeah, this one is
here.
This
is a blank straight. It's like no handlebars, no.
Yep.
No. What do you call them? No
Training wheels.
No training wheels. It's training wheels off. Right.
Yeah.
Now, for the folks, it says there's 12 of us in here, and I know some people are in here haven't really asked any questions stuff. This is a perfect scenario to ask even what you might think is a dumb question, because I am by no means a guru at JavaScript. I am still learning and haven't even got to JavaScript yet in Flatiron. Everything I know of JavaScript is just from stuff I've done before. Jason has completed it, so he's done projects with JavaScript and React for his like front end for his final project and stuff like that, right, Jason?
Yeah, I've done all my final project was React, Redux, and my all my backend stuff is Rails, APIs and stuff like that. I'm learning Node now, but yeah. And please look, like, seriously, I know it's cliche, but like there are no stupid questions. Like there are questions that I wish I'd asked that I thought were stupid that I didn't ask because I was like, oh, this is stupid or it's too nuanced. I mean,
Sean,
and I had a bunch of questions that were just like, and that's really why I went in person, because I'm like, okay, I need somebody to answer this stupid question so I can go and drag them in the corner and whisper in the ear because I just think it's stupid.
Yeah.
But there are no stupid questions. Trust me.
Chanda's asking in chat, and I'll take a swing at this one first, and then you jump in there and tell me what you think. She says, it's smart to have an understanding of HTML and CSS before moving into JavaScript. Now, a lot of people say start with HTML and CSS. I would say it wouldn't be a bad idea, and here's why. If you go directly into JavaScript first, and you're dealing with stuff like that's on the screen right now, it may be very overwhelming and confusing, right? An analogy that I've used before, metaphor, whatever, is if I brought you a alternator or a starter and took it apart and showed you how to take it apart and put it back together and fix it and whatever, and you've never even seen a car, you've never drove a car, seen a car, I don't even know what a car is, but I just keep asking you to work on this functioning device. If you've learned HTML and CSS, at least if you're brand new, at least it gives you more of a visual idea of what's going on a web page, why it's on the web page, how it got there, and then CSS to like why is it the color it is, or why is it in on the screen where it's at, things like that. So I don't think it's a bad idea to do HTML and CSS first before you get into functionality of an actual language. A lot of courses will want to start you off immediately learning Python, learning JavaScript. I think if you're a visual type person, we did a workshop a couple weeks ago I tried to do where I did just a page of HTML with CSS and one little function in JavaScript just to show people an on-click, a button on-click with HTML and why when you click it, it output something. Just to try to give people an idea of how the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript were all tied together and how they interact and why when you're making JavaScript, why you're doing it, because something's going to be attached to that for the interface that somebody's going to see or be interacting with. Yes. So I think if you're brand new, I would go to freecodecamp.org and just go through the HTML and CSS part. When you're done with that, just stop, then maybe dive into JavaScript, because if you've never seen any code on screen before, and you go right into a language, I don't think it's going to be as clear to you of what you're even working on. Again, back to me giving you an alternator or starter to fix or work on if you've never seen a car, right? Jason, your thoughts on that question? What do you think?
You know what? I agree with you theoretically, but a mistake I made, and there's no part of that I disagree with you, but a mistake that I made is that I stayed in HTML and CSS too long. I definitely think you should start there because, visualization, there's some kind of motivation and things, something that keeps you motivated and keeps you going about seeing something pop up on the screen. But I stayed in HTML and CSS way too long. I would tell people to go through it, learn it, see how it works. Yeah, the basics. If you can't remember everything, that's fine. But jump to JavaScript. If you're going to be a full stack developer, or you're going to be, a front end developer, you're going to need JavaScript. But I would encourage people to jump into JavaScript or any functional language, whether it's Python, Ruby, JavaScript. Jump into that as early as you can, because I wish I had jumped into it way early. I mean, I spent years, and not it's not 5 years, but I spent 2, 3, probably 1 or 2 years building sites with HTML, CSS, doing beautiful stuff and parallax and all the rest of this stuff and And then when it was time to what encouraged me to go to JavaScript was I just had these websites that looked pretty. There was no interaction. There was no interactivity. And I'm like, I got to get some, I got to get some interactivity going on here. Then I jumped into JavaScript, and that was like a whole different paradigm. And I'm like, why did I spend so much time in HTML and CSS? So I would say do that. But if you had, I think if somebody has the ability to deal with a functional language and they're fine seeing something console logged or something showing up in the terminal, and that motivates them enough, I would say for them to spend a lot of time doing that, because I feel like HTML and CSS is something that you could take a full week and just buckle down to HTML and you'll learn HTML. You could take 1 whole week after that and just learn CSS.
I do agree. I totally agree with what you're saying too. Because I was more of just a crash course just so you have a basic understanding of it. It is very easy to be learning this kind of stuff and think that before you move on to the next thing, you have to master something.
Right.
Unless you are wanting to have a career of just building websites for people and like landing pages and static websites where there's no interaction, like, a little local sandwich shop, and it's just, you click on there and there's the menu and a picture of the building and their phone number and all that stuff. If that's all you're wanting to do, you could spend time and master HTML and CSS. But if you start getting into doing web apps and mobile apps and software and things like that, you got to learn back end. And if you learn back end, you got to learn languages. So
right. And I would say, Craig, just to jump in, I would say that a novice wouldn't even know, right? You wouldn't even know what you want to do, right? I mean, right. you have to have exposure to everything to say, you know what? I'd probably be a little bit more front end, right? So even if you think that, I had fun with HTML and CSS, so I thought, hey, this is all I'd be doing, or this is all I want to do. But I didn't know about JavaScript. I didn't know about databases and Rails and MongoDB and Node and all that kind of stuff. So I think after you go so far and you get a good enough exposure to everything, I think you can make that decision at that point. But, I just don't think, I don't think people know soon enough.
That's why I like the software engineering track of most of these boot camps, because I call it like the general contractor, right? Full stack. Perfect. You're going to learn enough doing software engineering to where enough front end, enough HTML and CSS to get you by. If you're really an artistic person and that's all you want to focus on is the graphics and the interface, that's where the UX design and that kind of stuff goes. But software engineering is definitely I think a wonderful foundation that you can go any direction you want, whether it's just doing websites or doing apps, even doing video games, whatever. You will learn enough of full stack front end and back end to know. Trust me, 6 months from now, you're going to know so much more than you know now. You're not going to you wouldn't even be able to identify yourself talking about this stuff later. It's like a whole new world that you're in.
Oh man, that is so true. That is so, oh man.
Hey, how long did it take you to get comfortable with with JavaScript when you first started out?
You know what? It took me probably, I'd say about 6 months, maybe 6 months. But it probably took me about 6 months. But then, what's interesting about JavaScript and these functional languages, it's almost kind of like akin to like reading a book on how to drive, right? 10 and 2, 12 and 2, or 10 and 2, whatever the heck it is. Gas pedal, brake, and you're reading a book, and then maybe you take another step and you take, your dad's car out to the parking lot, the grocery store parking lot after 12, and it's empty out there, right? One of the things you're going to run into at Flatiron, which was like somebody threw ice cold water on me. I love JavaScript. I hate Ruby. That's one of the things I was looking at boot camps, and I saw Ruby for Flatiron, and I was like, I don't want to learn. And I was like, I don't want to learn Ruby. And then guys on Career Karma With something, listen, just learn it. Just go through the full stack. You know, you could morph into different languages. Just learn the basics of it. So I said, all right, I'll learn Ruby. I'll do it. So I learned Ruby, and I hated Ruby. And the whole time I was kicking and scratching and screaming, and I hate Ruby. I hate Ruby. Learned Ruby on Rails, and I started to like Ruby a little bit more. Mod 3, we got to back to JavaScript, and I was like, I love JavaScript. Oh, we back to JavaScript. I can't wait. I can't wait to see what y'all do with this JavaScript. And this brings me to some advice that I would give for people with JavaScript. Learn the basics, learn what functions, variables, learn the basics of it. But when you get comfortable with JavaScript, start playing with JavaScript in the DOM, right? And what I mean by that is go open up your browser, preferably Chrome, hit your Command Shift J or whatever, open up the console, right? And start playing with JavaScript in there, right? Like, one of the things, the first thing we learned when we got to JavaScript in Flatiron was manipulating the DOM. So they say, look, go to the New York Times, go to the LA Times, go to the New York Post, and erase the third paragraph right off the web page, right? Like erase the third paragraph in the console with JavaScript, right? And this is something that, okay, these functions and stuff that we're doing here with the Deli Lab and all that stuff, and I'm not belittling it, or I'm not trying to make it seem juvenile or anything like that, but like, that was a part of JavaScript where I was like, holy bleep. Like, this is the JavaScript that you're going to have to do in the wild? Like, and so when you master JavaScript or get comfortable with it, I'm telling you, get element by ID, get element by class name, just start erasing stuff. Play with JavaScript in the DOM. Go to the web.
I just not to cut you off, but I just did that. They had brought us to the Wikipedia pages. On Ava Lovelace and stuff like that.
Yes, that's where your JavaScript gets on the highway. It gets on the local road, right? You're not in the parking lot anymore. You're not reading a book anymore. That's where you're going to really learn how to drive with your knees, right? To make a phone call while you're, turning up the radio while you're making a left,
learn how to eat a taco while you're driving.
Yes, right?
No, wait, you shouldn't do that.
No, exactly. But you get what I'm saying. The nuances of navigating that world with JavaScript, and that's one thing about Flatiron, man. I got to tell you guys, I didn't get my bearings until I got out of there. Everything was like drinking from a fire hydrant. I'm seriously. It was like, here's this new thing.
You did the immersive too, so you did the 5-month program, right?
And I tell people 3 weeks.
That is ludicrous speed. Like, it is literally, when they say 55 hours a week, yeah.
Man,
don't think you're gonna still do the part-time job even. You don't.
No. I mean, every module's 3 weeks. You go to the next module, and it's like they throw you go into a lecture, and it's like 1 week. The first module you learn Greek, the second module you learn French, the third module you learn German, and you're like, wait a minute, what? And they're like, here's a lecture. The first week, at the end of the first week, you need to write an essay in German, and it needs to be 4 paragraphs, structured this way. And you're like, what? Like, how? What are you talking about? And it's just drinking from a fire hose. It never stops. It never stops. But,
somebody asking some other questions. Chris was asking about suggestions on coding on a Chromebook or maybe a web-based IDE. Basically coding on a low-end device. I've seen people that don't have a computer or laptop that are just in the process of trying to learn. I've seen people have an iPad, they get a keyboard for it, different things like that. But you're gonna get to the point, especially if you're gonna enroll in a boot camp, where you got to get a computer. Whether you find one on Craigslist, find a friend that has an old one that they can clean up and let you use something. You're gonna want to be coding, because a lot of this stuff is not available. You're not gonna be able to do it on a phone or a tablet.
No.
And then
I can answer that question. I use a 64-bit Chromebook, and I got the bigger screen. I can do. I've loaded Java on here. I can do almost everything. Only thing, when I was trying to get into Clam Academy, the only thing I couldn't load was Eclipse. But every other IDE, I don't have a problem with. But I did use Eclipse Chai, and but it was a cloud IDE, and it worked fine.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's
But
what I mean. If you're just practicing, use whatever is at your disposal, right, to be able to practice. But if you get into a boot camp, there are going to be things, especially when if you go to Flatiron, the first thing you're doing is doing Ruby. And you're going to have to use that IDE on Flatiron's learn.co. And I haven't tried to sign on to learn.co with like a Chromebook or something, but I'm just saying eventually it's going to happen. You're going to have to be on a PC. I don't think you're going to be able to go too far that way. Vanya asked about jQuery. To the best of my knowledge, I don't recall ever seeing any jQuery on any of the Flatiron pre-course or anything Flatiron. I've used jQuery a little bit on my own on something else, but I did not see it as part of Flatiron's track. Sorry, Aaron. I understand. Absolutely. Use what you got at your disposal, right? But I think eventually in the back of your mind, make plans that you're going to need to pick up.
Well, yeah, I'll get a Mac. Push come to shove, eventually I'll use a Mac. But I'm pretty, I'm not scared of Linux. A command line is fine with me.
I just got a laptop and I wiped Windows 10. It was hard to do because I've used Windows forever, but I got a brand new laptop. I wiped Windows 10 off and I put Linux Mint on there. It's going to be just strictly for my school and my own project, nothing for coding. There's not gonna be anything else. I put Chromium on there, which is basically a Linux version of Chrome for the browser. VS Code I have on there. So it's going to be my machine just for development stuff, right? So this is going to be kind of new for me for Linux, but so far it's running super smooth, and Windows is just an operating system too. So, as long as you can get the necessities of what you need, there's a lot of workarounds I would have to do with the Windows 10 machine to get stuff to be able to work. And at least with Linux now, I got a lot of that stuff out of my way. So
see, that's why I like the Chromebook, because it has Linux under the hood, and it hasn't, I've only had problems with, and you have to go do some YouTube things and some tutorials on how to install some things, but it's not a big issue. Right now I can't afford a Mac, but I would love to have a Mac, to do, development stuff on. But right now, like I said, you got to do what you got to do.
Well, I'll tell you, I talk to a lot of people that are not in Career Karma and that are not in boot camps on Discord. I'm in a Discord channel with like 17,000 people in it.
Okay.
And it's for Josh Fluke. He does a YouTube channel and all that stuff. But I'm an admin in that Discord, and there's regulars that hang out in there all the time. And I will tell you right now that a majority of them use Linux, that do dev work all the time. And then a lot of people have Macs, of course, but just saying it's something to definitely check into as you go down that path, is checking out the difference, because all it is, it's still a computer, it's still just an operating system. It's got files and folders and windows and different things. It just doesn't have all the extra junk that comes with Windows, like when you buy a new computer, and you load Windows on there. It's just kind of a more streamlined operating system, so you can do coding and a lot of this environment without having so many workarounds,
Right.
So, okay. So we're probably gonna wrap it up here in a few minutes, unless somebody's got questions.
Yeah, I got a question. Mr. Jason, how like eager was the new company was to hire you, some like you, fresh out of boot camp?
Well, what's going to happen is, and this is you asked a good question, because you steer me down the road to get some good sound advice. Anybody that's going in person, and I don't, Craig can definitely speak to the online curriculum and how things are, how things are set up there. In person, most of the modules, when we started building projects, we had partners to build projects with. But whether you have a partner or not, and I don't know how each of you guys or ladies work with other people, but if you work well with partners, just try to get as many projects done as possible. So if you work well with people, try to get as many projects done working with people. Me personally, the way it was set up for me to go in person, if we failed a code challenge, a lot of times we had to do our projects by ourselves. We had to do solo projects to kind of prove that we understood the material without, like an assistance of a partner. So I only passed one code challenge like on the first time. I failed probably the next three the first time, which subsequently led to me having to do a project by myself. That hampered me because I wasn't able to spend as much time as I wanted to on my projects. So when I got out of Flatiron, I didn't have they want you to have 3 projects completed to put on your resume. But with that said, the way Flatiron is set up to help you do a career, the way they handle the career services is really brilliant. And it's really about being diligent. They have a they kind of have a weekly set of requirements that you have to adhere to. And they're those things are in place for a reason, because they definitely furnish results. The company I'm gonna tell you guys, there are a lot of jobs for, it's one thing to see the consumer report or the news report or the jobs report and the nation, and code is going up by 20% a year and blah 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 blah. But there are a lot of jobs. I'm talking about my email is filled with jobs. So the bottom line is the company in particular, they were eager to hire me. They actually flew me out to Chicago on their dime, and
you got flued out.
Yeah, they flew me out to Chicago. They showed me the team. I met with the team, went to lunch with these guys. It kind of showed me what I would be doing. Again, like I said earlier, I knew none of the stuff that they were talking about. This is stuff that, I had the next 3 weeks, almost 3 weeks to actually buckle down and learn. And they don't expect me to learn and master it all. We're going in as junior developers, and that's it. There's an expectation on employers that they know that they're going to have to show us a lot. So don't try to act like you know everything. The most important thing is, and it sounds cliche, guys, but I'm telling you this because I was skeptical in the beginning in July, and 7 months later, how many other months we are removed from July, I'm telling you it's the truth. If you show a willingness to learn, and you show a willingness to be committed to the company, so any company you interview for, make it seem like it's your dream company, right? Speak specifically about the company, what you like about it, and what you can see yourself doing with the technology that you've learned. Oh man, MBA, man, I love you guys. I can see myself building you guys' new website, or the analytics that you guys do. Speak specifically to how you're going to implement your skills into that company's culture. But it's really just about applying a lot, networking a lot. They say, hey, don't come out of the boot camp and just send out a bunch of applications. If you see a job that you like, let's say you want to work at LinkedIn, or let's say you want to work at, I don't know, Delta, and you see a job posting, look for the hiring manager at Delta on LinkedIn, right? If you can't find that person, look on on Delta's LinkedIn page and see Flatiron alum. If you can't find anybody that went to Flatiron, look for the software developer that went to Delta. In LinkedIn, you can search for all those different things and say, hey, what is it like to be a software developer at LinkedIn? What technologies are you using? What are you guys doing behind the scenes? How long have you been there? Just start a conversation. Don't say, hey, man, hook me up with a job, or how can I get in? Build a rapport with these people who are developers, and, your third or fourth exchange, once you engage with them, say, hey, I'm thinking about, applying. Give me, what's some advice you would give me for applying and stuff like that. So it's just about, and again, Flatiron and the career service, they have all these things set up. So trust the process. That's what I would tell you, man. Trust the process. A lot of the stuff that you guys are hearing us say, a lot of the stuff you guys are hearing other people on Career Commerce say, other people, stuff you're hearing people at Flatiron saying. It sounds hokey. It sounds general. It sounds vague. It's real. I jumped on this call to tell you guys that it's real.
do your homework when you go to apply somewhere. If you want, especially if you have an interview planned, go to their homepage. Most places have a about us, or like an intro, a bio, or their credo, or that kind of stuff. Do your homework on that, so when you go in there, you're not blindsided. What their company's about, and like Jason's saying, throw that stuff out there. Like, hey, I saw you guys are really involved in doing this, whatever, for the environment or something. I'm really big, that's whatever,
Right. Right.
Bypass that HR, bypass those filters on Indeed and stuff, get those contacts, go to meetups, network, find those people. So you got somebody on the inside, because that's going to give you so much insight, for where you're going after, if there's a place you want to go to get a job for.
Yeah.
Me personally, I don't mean to cut you off. Me personally, I actually want to transfer with the job that I'm at right now, because I work for Tulane University. I actually stay in Louisiana, and I'm actually employed at Tulane right now. So I would like to transfer
into a software developer job at Tulane.
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's smart. That's brilliant. You're already in. You're already in. So that's brilliant.
I met a guy at a meetup here in Columbus, Ohio, that did Flatiron last summer. He actually did the self-paced, but he'd already completed it. And I met him at a meetup. He turned down two or three job offers here in Columbus, and actually took a job and moved to Chicago back in early December, making over $100,000 a year. So when you hear these stories like Keisha Lake, 98,000, work for Stitch Fit, this friend of mine making over 100, other people, I know two other guys, Flatiron graduates, this fall, they just moved from DC down to North Carolina, making like 65, 70, starting out.
Yeah.
It's not pipe dreams. These things can happen.
Listen, I'm not going to disclose on this call, but my offer was very close to six figures, very close. You could take it how you want it.
99,999.
Very close to six figures.
I'm always wondering about that. Like, you finally get the job, it's like, you want to tell everybody what you make, but it's like, you don't want to piss off the company that you're telling how much they hire, because somebody else might see that or whatever.
Right. Yeah. I see the convention is to not, I see people, they definitely don't tell you the company. I've never seen a lot of people, I've rarely seen people tell the company, but yeah, I'm telling you guys, they flew me out, I got this offer. They told me to stay an extra day to look for apartments, because they were really like, look, they're giving me subliminal, indirect and direct hints that they wanted me. And, I finished looking at apartments, and they sent me the email with the offer. And I was just, I'm the type of person that I've always been driven in my life. And I'm not the type to really stop and smell the roses, because once I'm like 80% done with something, I'm like on to the next thing. But I had to really stop and really smell the roses. And I'm like, wait a minute, in July, I did not know what the heck was going on. And now somebody's paying me to come in, and they know how much I don't know.
Yeah. Jason, if you don't mind, how old are you?
And that's the other thing. I am going to be 45 this year. Okay.
Because that's been a concern with me, because I'm 47, and I've talked to a lot of people that are just like, man, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. They're hiring for your skills. They want butts in seats to get a job done. I got another 20 years more working at least before I retire. A lot of people, these younger people, and no offense to younger people, but they'll go to these companies, they'll work there 2 years and then jump ship and go somewhere else and jump ship. And it's a common thing nowadays that if you work anywhere more than 8 or 10 years, they're like, what's wrong? Don't you like new experiences or something? It's almost like the days of our parents working in the mill for 40 plus years to retire. They don't expect that now. So that makes me feel better. Now, I'm sure there's going to be certain scenarios out there where they're not going to think I'm a good fit because, okay, boomer, whatever kind of thing. Right. But I'm not going to want to work at that kind of place anyway, but that still makes me feel good that you.
Yeah. And I think naturally people, we all highlight our own shortcomings, or we all highlight and focus on the things that may impede us more than somebody externally will. So that's a natural thought. And I definitely was concerned about ageism. I've never, my cohort mates, they were all half my age, and they couldn't believe how old I was. Like I had TAs that were like, I'm gonna be 45 this year. I had TAs that were 23, 24. And like my cohort mates would be like, we were together for 4 months, but so by that time you had every appropriate conversation you could have. So the, you know, how old are you conversation started floating around, and you kind of guessing and stuff like that. And, you know, they're like, how old are you, Jason? And I'm like, guess. And they're like, oh, 32 and 29. And I'm just laughing. I'm like, Ryan, our TA, like, I'm literally old enough and responsibly old enough to be his pops. Like, I wouldn't have had him at 16 or you know, 15, no disrespect to anybody. Like, but I'm like, I would have been 20 having him. Yeah. And they're like, no way. And I literally had to whip out my license. And they were like, you know, this one Spanish guy was like, black don't crack, man. You know, because they just,
I just turned 54, and
wow.
Yeah, I actually resigned. I was a supervisor at O'Hare Airport for a fueled aircraft, and I got out of it to go back to school. And it's a hard road right now, but. Hey, Craig, I want to tell you, I did get that book, Power of Habit.
Nice. I like it. I think you enjoy it. I recommend it. It's just kind of a collection of different stories and stuff, but it talks about the human mind and how humans in general are habitual, and it really starts getting you thinking about our mannerisms, how we do stuff all the time, and how if you're trying to break bad habits or create new good habits, I recommend that book to anybody if you get a chance to read it.
I do also want to recommend another book, and I recommend the audio, "Can't Hurt Me" by
David
Goggins. Yeah,
awesome.
It's a great book.
But you feel young and dumb. I'm 28.
No, man. Father, you know, time waits on no man, right, or whatever. So time's clicking on all of us. You just got to do the best you can with what you got.
I don't mean to cut you off. I don't feel bad now because I'll be 48 on the 25th of this month.
No,
so
don't feel bad. I'm telling you, there's room out there for all of us, and that's what career karma is all about. Is kind of us all helping each other as a community. Because it don't matter where you come from, you know, who you are, whatever. We're all one big family now, and there's enough jobs out there, like Jason was saying, once you start getting out there and really looking at it. Now, if you live in Cornville, Iowa or something, I mean, obviously you're going to be limited, right? Go to meetups. If you're in a city, if you're in Atlanta, you're in Dallas, you're in Chicago, go to meetup.com, find meetups in your area, start going out and meeting people.
Okay. Yeah, I actually done that. I'm meeting a lot of different people. Slack. I've joined a lot of different organizations, developers, getting some mentors. It's pretty cool. Meeting different people.
It gives you practice speaking to people. If you're a reclusive person, if you're shy, if you're an introvert and not used to going out and speaking to people, go to meetups, practice with people. You know, it's like go somewhere where you can talk to people that you may never even see again if you never go back there. So if you don't have to feel embarrassed, just go talk to people. Walk up and be like, okay, I'm going to go in this place. I'm going to walk up to 10 strangers, put out my hand and shake hands, say, hi, I'm Craig. I'm new. It's my first time here. Because what's it going to hurt? Okay. You trip and fall in front of everybody. You just leave. You never come back. You never see them again. Right. Of course, my luck, I end up interviewing with one of them at the next job interview I have. But I met a guy that's mentoring me one day a week for an hour, whether we go meet for coffee or we do a Zoom meeting. And he is a Rails dev here in town. He makes like 140 some grand a year. He's self-taught, been doing it for 7 years. And he's willing to spare an hour a week just because he sees that my situation, that he wants to help me to get ready to all the. I think
that's actually my situation.
But the soft skills. Right?
That's actually my situation because I there's rarely anyone down south that is in the technology field, and I feel as though the youth and the millennials and the generation that's coming up under me has. The career path is very limited. They only want to be doctors, lawyers, or athletics, or they want to get athletics.
What I've seen is, and this is my opinion, but anywhere where there's a metropolis, right, like a city of any kind, or any whether it's colleges or whatever, they're out there somewhere. You know, go online, go to meetup.com, put in your thing if you haven't already.
Hey, you also might want to try I'm sorry. I used to live in Alabama. Huntsville, Alabama is a technology city. They get NASA there. A lot of government contractors are there. Also, plus they have an army base. North Carolina, Charlotte. That's a booming town for
the Triangle too, and Raleigh area, Raleigh, Durham, that whole area is getting real big. That's where those other two guys I was talking about moved down from DC for jobs. I know another guy that lives in Charlotte. So yeah, North Carolina, they're out there. You gotta kind of dig a little bit, but try to surround yourself with other people that are like-minded, or find yourself some people that are actually developers, because those are the people that, if you can get them to, even just get a little bit of advice from them or something to help steer you in the right direction. Aaron was talking about Audible earlier. I use Audible all the time. I'm telling you, between podcasts and Audible, when you're driving down the road, instead of listening to the radio, listen to something, immerse yourself in this. If this is what you're wanting to do, keep yourself immersed in it. Think code, ABC, always be coding. Doesn't mean you can't take breaks here and there, spend time with your family, all that. But don't listen to the same song you've got on your Spotify or something that you've listened to 3,000 times, Try something new. Get a podcast, Code Newbies, Career Karma. Get some Audible books on, like, maybe not self-help, but like the habits thing we were talking about earlier, or something that's going to keep your mindset in that mode, in that learning mode too.
Yeah, that's why I downloaded all those little coding games. I got the Mimo and the Grasshopper, and I just downloaded a tech dictionary.
That's dope. That's cool. That's cool. One thing I would say, Philip, in terms of the meetup stuff too, like if you can't find one, start one, right? Because you never know. There may be a bunch of people like you who are not part of one because there isn't one, but would be part of one and go to one if there was one.
You're absolutely
right. I have a squad on Career Karma. We call it Go Getters, and it's the Southern-based people who want to get into code.
Philip, what you could do, go on meetup.com, create your own meetup, and just pick like a IHOP or a coffee shop or somewhere like around your area, and just set up a meetup. Like, hey, Wednesday mornings at 7 a.m. meet for coffee at this coffee shop or this donut shop, and just put it out there on Meetup. And then if there's other people around, they'll find you. And just go there every Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock, sit there and eat a donut, drink a cup of coffee for an hour, bring your laptop, and then eventually you'll start, if there's other people in the area, they'll start finding you too.
Hey, Aaron, thanks for mentioning the Huntsville, Alabama, because I'm here in Birmingham. So, Philip, I'm down south also. And what I was thinking about doing was moving to Georgia once I finished the boot camp, because I was thinking it's like way more opportunities, over there versus in Alabama. But NASA, now that you mentioned that, that's just right up the road. So,
yeah, Huntsville is I lived there for about 8 or 9 years, and it's a lot of technology. That's a technology city, and it's very diverse, diverse, and also they have University of Alabama there, satellite campus, and also Alabama A&M.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very diverse. There's a lot of people. NASA's there. They build missiles there. There's a lot of things to do there.
I'm in New Orleans.
Hey guys, just before everybody starts leaving, just so you know, Melvin asked me earlier if I would be willing to do an HTML CSS workshop kind of thing, maybe on a Wednesday night or something. So just keep an eye out for that. If we do one, we'll promote it or whatever, if anybody's interested in doing that. Okay.
I'm interested because I'm new to everything. So
I told him I need some time to put something together to show, because but just keep that in mind. We're going to try to do these more often, and I was talking to Timur and Melvin about it too, because we have so many new people coming into Career Karma, and there's so many people in this beginning stage. That's why we're doing these. That's why we're recording them, so other people can watch them next time, so we don't not automate it, but not reinvent the wheel and have the same thing over and over.
Right.
We want everybody to succeed. We want every single person on Career Karma to accomplish whatever you guys are wanting to accomplish. You want to get another job, start your own business, start a startup. You have your own business. You want to do your own website, whatever your reason is. We all want to help each other get there, right? So spread the word. If you talk to people in your squads, these AMAs, these workshops, that's what they're here for. And if you guys have ideas for workshops or something you feel like would be beneficial, let Timur know, let Melvin know, let me know, whatever. Okay.
Hey, Craig, I got two things before I leave.
Yeah.
First, where can I find the video of this? And number two is, I finished Lambda and I took the challenge and I missed it by one question. Time ran out.
Oh, the 45-minute.
Did you do it?
I did it 3 times, and as far as I know, it's unlimited. I think you can do it. I think you can do it as many times as needed, but they're all 3 random JavaScript code challenges. You get 45 minutes, and I did 2 of them. One of them was kind of like a fizz buzz. One of them was like reverse a string and capitalize the first letter or something.
Right.
And then the third one was something else that you know what? I kept looking at the clock too, and the clock beat me. But I finally got to where I could knock all 3 of them out. So if you're doing Lambda, you're going to have to pass 45 minutes to do 3 JavaScript little code challenges. And to answer your first question, if you want to watch this video again recorded, PayPal me $9.99. No, I'm just kidding. It'll be up on the Career Karma website, or Career Karma YouTube channel. At this point, it's 2.5 hours long, so let's hope they have enough room on the YouTube channel for it. I'm just kidding. It should be okay.
All right, guys.
Look for it the next couple days on the YouTube channel for Career Karma.
Me too, guys. I got to call Mom back.
Okay. All right, thanks, Jason. Appreciate it so much, man.
Great meeting with you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yep. Everybody have a great night.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.